Welcome back to Squawk Box this morning. The pandemic reshaping the workplace, which is now more flexible and remote, and that could have a lasting impact on the commercial real estate market, especially office space. I want to talk about it this morning. Joining us in a rare television interview is Owen Thomas. He is the CEO of Boston Properties, which is one of the largest owners, managers, and developers in the United States with office properties in Boston, New York, D.C., Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. Owen, we hear almost every day a new company that says that they plan to work remotely either for longer or in some cases we're hearing forever. And I want to understand from you, as you're thinking about the future, what you think the workplace ultimately looks like.
Yeah. So good morning, Andrew. Thank you for having me this morning. We certainly have been hearing a lot of this reporting and rhetoric as well. You know, I think we are heavily engaged with our customers. We have over 50 million square feet. Over 95% of them are paying rent, and they're heavily engaged with us right now about how to safely get back into their workspace. Clearly, in the short term, this is going to be a gradual return to work for safety reasons. And there are going to be government regulations that are also set up that will cause a gradual return to the workplace. But even many of these companies that are saying that, you know, their employees don't have to come back to the office till the end of the year or later, they are starting to they will be sending employees back to their offices when they open at the outset. I think what's happening, Andrew, is that these work from home tools that we are all using existed before the pandemic occurred. And then we had the pandemic and we all got put into this forced experiment of working remotely. And I think perhaps to some people's surprise, it's worked reasonably well. It's been functional. We're getting things done. But I do think business leaders that I talk to kind of wonder, you know, when the pandemic clears and it's time again to re-engage with clients and to win business, you know, is the remote work really going to be effective? And I think I also hear from our customers that the remote work is not an acceptable replacement for the in-person interactions that happen in the office space. You know, the ability to mentor younger employees, the spontaneous collaboration and creativity that occurs, and also the culture that companies develop. It's very difficult to do it, you know, when we're all on Zoom and WebEx. So again, I think this is a two-step process. We have a pandemic underway. It'll be a gradual return to the office, but I do think companies will be actively using their offices in the long term.
And do you anticipate long-term people staying in what are called super cities, the New Yorks, the San Franciscos, the Bostons of the world? Or do you see these sort of satellite offices growing and some of this shifting? You're already hearing in places like New York City, people looking for office space, big companies looking for office space in Westchester, in Connecticut, and other places, with the idea that some of their employees might ultimately end up there. We had the CEO of WeWork on. There was a sort of a contrarian view he had, which is actually that this could be an accelerant for his business because people are going to want these satellite offices, and they're also going to want even more space, oddly enough. And instead of these big open floor plans where everybody's sitting on each other's laps, we're going to go back to offices. Yeah.
So let me break that down into two pieces. One is about the suburbs and the vibrancy of the large cities, and the second is about what I'd call spacing. So on the suburbs and the hub and spoke, absolutely. You know, as I described earlier, when we're in this initial phase during the virus, I do think that some companies will set up remotely. And, you know, think through what that's saying. Companies are saying, look, we don't want to work from home. We want to have our people in a physical office. And so we're going to go to the cost and the expense of leasing something in the suburbs on a short-term basis so we can put them all together. So I think that's a huge statement confirming what I mentioned earlier in my remarks. So I do think also some of the suburban moves that companies are making are also temporary, they're trying to put together offices for their suburban employees while the pandemic is underway. But I do think when the risks of the virus disappear for whatever reason, I think the companies will come back to the city. I believe in the vibrancy of our large cities, or large cities around the world. Knowledge workers, talented workers want to congregate in cities. They want to be together. They want to experience the culture and the excitement of big cities. They will come back. And that's why the employers are there, is because they want to attract the talent. So I don't think that's changed. It's changed in the short term because, unfortunately, due to this crisis, we can't be together and be the social animals we want to be. But I think it will go away when the crisis is over. Now, coming back to your next point about WeWork, and is they are one thing that's very important here in a trend for office is we're spreading out. So given the crisis, companies are having to they're taking out workstations, and they're having to reverse a lot of the densification they've put in their spaces over the past few years.
Owen, let me ask you right now, of the 164 office properties that you manage and the 5 retail spaces, how many of your customers are paying their rent in full and on time?
So we reported in our earnings call that in April we collected, well, this is in the queue, we've collected 96 to 97% of our rents among our office tenants. And for our customers overall, which includes retail, we have a small amount of retail, but we do have retail that's in the low 90s. And for May, we haven't announced those results yet, but for May, the collections are also very favorable.
But for the retail properties themselves, I think that's where people have the most questions because they were shut down, bringing in any revenue. Could you tell us just specifically what percentage of the retail people are paying their rents in full?
It's in the 30 to 35% range. Wow. So as an office landlord, a lot of the retail that we have is what we call service retail. So it exists as an amenity for our office customers. It's located at the base of our buildings. And a lot of those amenities are restaurants and other similar type of establishments. And we've been working with those customers to abate their rent, to defer their rent, whatever they need to do to help them get back on their feet after this crisis is over.